Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number 2990-633 2 3/4 inch screen door spring hinge, half surface, steel base, adjustable tension, button tip, and a satin brass finish. So I have one removed from the packaging here, and by the way, when you purchase one, they're going to send you one hinge. They're not sold per pair. They might put two in a box, but they might put one in a box. So they're sold as each, just one hinge. It's possible that you'll need two, so order two. It might be that you want to have a third. Anyway, let's get into it. So what is a 2990? Well, that part number is specifically the title. It's going to be a half-surface spring hinge that is going to be steel base, that is going to be adjustable or variable tension, that is going to have a button tip, because all of those words that I just used conspire to mean 2990. That also could mean that you would get something that would be not half surface. Maybe something without a button tip, or maybe something that has a fixed spring tension. Maybe something that's not made of brass, steel, even though that would not be the case with this hinge. So let's start at the beginning. What is a half-surface hinge? Simply stated, a half-surface hinge is a hinge that one leaf mounts to the frame and the other leaf mounts to the door. And the important thing to remember is that the leaf that mounts to the door is the surface leaf. If I said half mortise, same logic, the leaf that mounts to the door is mortised. So the word in the description applies to the door, not to the frame. So this is a half surface. That means that one leaf is mounted to the surface of the door, and that is indeed the case with this hinge. My jamb is here, and the leaf of my hinge is here, and the palm of my hand represents the door, so it's surface mounted. And then this jamb over here is the door. This hand over here is the jamb. Okay, this has a button tip. That's just a reference to what this looks like. The tips, top and bottom, if you use your imagination, they look like the button on your coat. This has an adjustable spring tension. For every order that you place, you'll get a tension rod. For every hinge that you'll order, you'll get a tension pin. I can change the amount of tension that is set on the spring by rotating that. Okay? And the item that just fell out of the hinge, and you don't want to lose it, is called the tension pin. For every order that you'll place, for every hinge that you order, you'll get one tension pin. So you might, if you order 3 hinges, you may not get 3 of these, but you'll certainly get 3 of these. You'll need those. And we'll talk about how to adjust the tension in a moment. But right now, with that tension pin removed, there's no tension on the spring at all, so we can really illustrate how this hinge works. Just like that. Some people have asked, can you lubricate this? You can. You can get some WD-40 inside of that seam. Have a rag to catch over spray and any spillage, but you can get in there and lubricate that. I would probably recommend that you might get the door open to 90 degree and get some of the lubrication in here. It's not going to be necessary, but down the road it could become necessary. With some surface oxidation on the spring itself, you might need to break that up. If the hinge starts to creak at some point down the way, lubricate it. It's not going to hurt anything. There's no doubt about that. So we talked about the half surface. It's very common to have one leaf surface mounted. It is made of steel. And that's where the 633 comes in. That means a couple of things. It means it's made of steel, the base material, that it has a satin brass finish. And that's what 633 means, steel base material with a satin brass finish. This is 2 3/4 tall, and that's a reference to the height of the hinge measured on the leaf. Now, you might have some Bommer hinges that have a height associated with it, like a double-acting spring hinge. It might be 6 inch. There's not really an easy place to measure 6 inch on the hinge when it's intended to define the door thickness range that it's compatible with. But you can measure 2 3/4 on this hinge. Now, this hinge, in terms of the finish, it is available in every common finish that you can imagine, your brasses, your bronze, your chromes, your nickels, satin, polished, oil rubbed. Bommer will do practically anything you want on the hinge, anything that you need. Might be a lead time associated with it, but they'll certainly entertain the idea of doing it. There is a link below this video to a document called Template, and that's where you will pick up your 2 3/4 leaf height, and then all of the other important dimensions on the hinge. The overall height of 3 3/8, what it looks like when the door would be open at 180 degrees, location of all of the screw holes. And speaking of that, screws will be included in a complimentary finish as well. Okay. Now, where are you going to use this? Well, you've got a wooden storm door, most likely. A lot of people buy these from us that have a retreat cabin somewhere in the woods up north. And in the summer, they go up there, and it's a vacation, and it's a log cabin, and they've got a wooden storm door. They also put them on their homes as well. And the important notion when considering these spring hinges is of how many to order. Generally, 2 is going to work just perfectly. And if you were hanging something up to 50 pounds, 2 will work fine. Wooden storm doors usually never approach that type of weight. So 2 will probably work magnificently for your application. However, I'm kind of a fan of having more than 2 spring hinges, only because, well, not because I'm a spring hinge salesman, but because I generally will find the behavior of a door a little more controllable when you have more spring power on reserve compared to less. With something incredibly light, if your door is going to be half of the weight prescribed, I would put 2. I wouldn't put 3. Some people want 3 because they want a top, middle, and hinge. That would make location. That would make sense. But the weight of the door doesn't necessarily demand that you have 3. But if you get into the heavier aspect, what you might want to consider is 3, because not only will you carry the weight of the door, and keep in mind that like 70% of the door weight is hung on that top hinge. So generally you'll see top, middle, and bottom, but you wouldn't be penalized if you put 2 at the top, because that's most efficiently where the door is going to be operating from, because you've got that top hinge carrying the majority of the weight of the door, which is going to compromise the efficiency of the spring. You like to have more springs on tap when it's a door that's weight-wise or size-wise is on the borderline, and obviously you wouldn't be doing anything larger than 3 foot or 7 foot on such a door. But if you were, you can augment that potential problem with more springs. I like the concept of more springs because you can better set the tension on the individual springs so as to better carry or share the workload. I liken the tension set on a spring to a tugboat. They don't go fast, but they can pull a lot of weight, and when you have residual stored energy on more springs rather than less, I think of it in terms of that, where you can get the job done, because maybe with a 25-pound storm door you don't have trouble like that, but you can get into a situation where the spring, you have to set the tension so high to get inertia moving on that door so that it just gets closed. More spring power, you can have more stored tension at the critical last 20 degrees, let's say. That door might get closed over here, but then not latch all the way or stand ajar a little bit. So you can play with the tension on your individual spring hinges so that to give you the best overall averaged behavior out of the door. And keep in mind, these are springs. They're not hydraulic controls, so you cannot control them like you could something that would be pneumatic or hydraulic. So you're really looking to find an averaged best scenario. The installation of the door itself might cause trouble with a spring. Your door might actually be cocked out at the bottom where the door is actually kind of doing this through its closing cycle. So you do need some spring power because the door is not hung correctly to begin with. It might be marginally not plumb, so that could be an issue where you might greatly benefit from more spring hinges. Also, finally, they're relatively inexpensive, and if 3 doesn't really matter in terms of cost, I suppose, I might opt for 3. Plus, putting one in the middle will help deter any sort of any sort of bow that you could develop in a door over time by another spring hinge being there in the center. Now, how to adjust the tension? with the tension collar, that's this thing here with the holes in it, when it's pointed towards the top of the door, you'll insert your tension rod and you're going to turn it clockwise. When you do that, you're going to reveal new holes and you're going to increase the tension. And it's into one of those new holes that you will set the pin. Release, it sets tension, and you can pull that out. Now I've got tension. Now, they're completely reversible. If it's towards the bottom because of the hand of the door, just turn it counterclockwise. It'll work the same way. That's how you set the tension. I think you'll want to have more tension set in your middle and bottom hinge, going to the top one last, because stress of the door physically being hung will be more so on that hinge. You don't want to tax that spring abnormally when it's already doing the load, majority of the load of carrying the door. Play with it. Get it set. Put 2 on. If you find that a third might benefit you, order another one. It's all good. Or that it's already 45 pounds, I would suggest you put 3 on there. It's atypical to put 2 at the top, but mechanically it's more efficient to do so because of the fact that that top hinge will be rendered somewhat less effective when it comes to spring power. Although it kind of defeats the purpose of having a hinge in the middle. And when you're already dealing with a door that's going to be very light to begin with, one in the middle would be the way to go with that. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I would very much recommend that you take a spin through the Bommer catalog because you're going to see everything that they make when it comes to spring hinges, both single and double acting, and their name is actually quite synonymous with the 3029, that common double acting, the Bommer hinge, the Bommer double acting hinge. That's what people know it as, and then everybody else has copied it. So if you have more than an occasional need for spring hinges, I would greatly suggest that you familiarize yourself with that catalog. But what you'll bump into is the fact that they make all hinges, even non-spring related hinges. They make single-acting spring hinges for a variety of different door manufacturers in terms of the templating of the holes. And then finally, they have a comprehensive offering of very high-quality lavatory hardware, solid brass, occupancy indicators, and strikes and rim keepers and things of that nature. If you have any questions on the Bommer 2990-633 half-surface spring hinge or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us.